Have you ever wondered why your nervous system feels stuck in survival mode, no matter how clean you eat, how many supplements you take, or how much you try to rest? Are you tired of feeling like your body's working against you while your mind never stops racing? Well, what if I told you that what looks like burnout or brain fog might actually be undiagnosed ADHD, and that understanding your wiring could actually change everything about how you heal? If that sounds like you, you're not alone. So many women with autoimmune conditions are finally discovering that their chronic fatigue, overwhelm, and mental fog aren't just random autoimmune symptoms. They're actually part of a deeper story about the nervous system, trauma, and self regulation. Welcome back to the Health Bridge podcast. I'm your host, Holly B., and I help women with lupus and autoimmune disease reduce flares and regain their energy naturally so they can show up fully for their higher purpose again. Today, I'm joined by Ron Souers, ADHD advocate, author, and podcast host of Don't Mind Me, I Just Have ADHD, who is dedicated to empowering adults with ADHD to embrace their differences and unlock their true potential. We're diving into the intersection between ADHD and autoimmunity, how trauma impacts both, why routines and consistency are key for nervous system repair, and what radical responsibility and radical acceptance really mean when it comes to healing. By the end of this episode, you'll understand how to work with your wiring instead of against it, and why true healing starts when you stop trying to fix yourself and start listening to your body's signals. Stick around because we're answering the question, can understanding your ADHD be the missing link in your autoimmune healing journey? Before we dive in, can you take a quick second to subscribe to this podcast on whichever platform you're listening in on? It really helps our reach in getting this information out further to more ears that need to hear it. Thank you so much for doing that. And now let's jump into the episode. Ron Souers, welcome to the podcast. I'm excited to dive into this topic with you today.
Yeah, me too. Thank you for having me on your show. It's an honor and a privilege.
You've been really open about your late diagnosis of ADHD and how it kind of reframed your whole life story. And many of my listeners are women midlife with autoimmune conditions that they're struggling with. And for myself personally, I also have autoimmune, but I've also over the last 9, 10 months or so been realizing and learning that I myself have some ADHD tendencies. And so I started diving into that a little bit more. And is that common with women with autoimmune conditions? And while it doesn't apply to everybody for sure, there's definitely a lot of crossover there. I think a lot of women with autoimmune have that sort of hyperactive or hypervigilant nervous system. They have that hyperactive mind. That's certainly part of my story. And I think that so there's some crossover there between not being able to regulate that well, not having learned to regulate that very well, and having that as a possible underlying root cause of the progression of autoimmune conditions. And so for our listeners, can you sort of share a little bit about your story as far as how understanding that, oh, I have ADHD, like how that understanding helped you connect the dots between your brain and your emotional world and your body, and how that sort of changed how you went through your life moving forward? I know that's a big
Yeah,
question.
there's a lot to unpack there.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'll try to stay on. But yeah, what really started everything was like I was about to lose my job at my work. And, I was really scared because like I couldn't slow down. And, throughout my whole life, people were telling me that I needed to slow down, that I'm going too fast. And, I just really thought that, they didn't know what they were talking about. And, I was finally starting to listen when I like was about to get fired from my job because like I had was damaging company property, hurting myself, going too fast, getting distracted, blaming other people for it. So what I what I ended up doing was going to my general practitioner and asking, like telling her the whole thing, like I can't slow down, I'm scared, I'm gonna lose my job, I don't know what to do. And she kind of like drew a blank, and I was like, maybe I got ADHD because like I was talking to other people in my life that were saying that maybe you have that, maybe you need to get that checked out. So she was like, she didn't seem convinced, but like she gave me a list with a bunch of like psychotherapists and psychologists. And so I went down that list, like really wanting to get the answer. Like I thought it at that time, I didn't know it, but I was like trying to get it fixed. There was like so much relief for like, okay, this is what I have. So I finally was able to sit down and talk to the therapist that I actually still have today. And the first thing that he said to me was like, this may seem like you're broken, but I can teach you how to make it into a strength. And at that time I was like, I don't know. And once that phase of like being on a pink cloud or whatever you want to call it, like it wore off, like I felt like I was one of those. Like I just felt more depressed and like I'm broken, like I'm not normal. So it was tough. It was tough for me, and so it really pushed me into doing like what he wanted me to do. So along that journey, I started to learn about like acceptance, and I started to really accept that, especially further events down the road, like with me almost getting fired again, kind of like push that into, this is something you got to look at, because I thought I'd gotten better with it because I'd stopped seeing him for a little bit. And yeah, it just ended up coming back in such a powerful way. So I had to understand like this is just who I am. There's no fixing it. And so I got into this mode of I want to understand this. Like I want to really, and that's when I started developing my podcast, because like I really was, I really love mental health, and I'm passionate about it, and I'm passionate about talking about it. So I was like, I wanted to talk about everything, and I got this book like Batman and psychology, the psychology of Batman or something like that, because I was like, man, this is cool, but it wasn't really as cool as like, because it was like going through these psychological terms and like relating it, and you know, um, but it was really eye-opening because like mental health is so broad, and I really wanted to niche it down for something that I understood, that I had experience with. And a lot of the research that I was doing was mainly just scientifical. It was hard to find. It really didn't have a lot of experience in it, and talking about, the experience of like what it feels like versus like, okay, this is how your brain's working. This is why it's not working. But like, okay, that doesn't really solve a lot of things. It just helps me to understand, well, okay, this is why I get distracted, which is good. But I wanted to learn things that actually helped.
And can you tease out a little bit what ADHD might present like for those that are like, I don't think I have ADHD? What might that look like? And I know that that can be different for men versus women. But are
Yeah.
there some typical frameworks that we can look at that can help us think, well, maybe this is something I should think about?
Yeah, and ADHD is kind of like a menu of things that, there's a large spectrum. So the first part of it is like inattentive. So it's like he might be, which I don't really, yeah, like I don't have a lot of experience with that side, because like, but I know people that are like that, when it's just, it just really looks like they're lazy, or they don't care, or they're unconcerned. It's more about that they can't process the information. They don't know what's going on, and they do it in such a like it's so overwhelming to them that life just shows up and they don't know what to do. They don't know what decisions to make because everything is like, okay, if I make this choice, then I won't have that choice. And like there's a lot of paralysis in that type. And then there's the other side of it, which is hyperactive, which I feel like I'm more on that side of the spectrum. And that's where you get people interrupting you or they're fidgeting a lot or, you know, they can't seem to sit still or like they just are all over the place when it comes to like they can't settle on one thing, you know, and a lot of it's like and then you see a lot of emotional dysregulation with that because there's you know these strong emotions that come up at the drop of a hat. Somebody says something to somebody and the thing is like it's okay to deal with those things, but at the same time, like you've got to understand your pattern when it comes to those, like why this is happening. And it's usually rooted in some type of trauma earlier on in your life. So with the spectrum, it's usually most people are in the combined, you know, so they have like something of this, like maybe they might be a little slow here. They might take a lot longer to do this. And then, but they're, you know, constantly interrupting you. So it could be a lot of different things. And with, you know, adults, it's harder to feel like you may have that because, like, for me, it was like, I thought that was a childhood thing that, you know, you just grow out of it and I'm good. And then, but for women, it's even more difficult to understand that because, like, what society puts on you guys is like you have to have it all put together. And if you show like you don't know or you can't be this or if you're hyperactive, you know, you get labeled as like chatty and that's a bad thing. So you got to kind of like there's so much masking going on because of the identity that you think you have to be to fit in because there's so much shame when you step outside those lines.
Taking a deep breath because I can relate to some of that.
Yeah, it's tough. Like I have such compassion and empathy for women because it's you guys have such to offer and so much strength that's just overlooked constantly because it takes so much like the emotions that a lot of women have that they can't express in this world and how they feel and they've got to just be stoic and like that takes a lot of persistence and resilience to live in this world.
For sure. And it eats away at you inside after a point. And
Yeah.
when we're talking about trauma, I think that that's part of it. So I think you've said that trauma can be both a cause and a consequence of dysregulation in the nervous system. And so it's like it's sort of a chicken or the egg conversation because it can go both
Right.
ways. Are we dealing with childhood trauma that we stuffed down and haven't healed? And that has triggered our ADHD or it has triggered our autoimmune symptoms? Or is it this like accumulation of societal pressures and bottling things in that end up being a trigger later in life? It can really go both ways. And I've seen both of it through, my work with and research on women with autoimmune.
Yeah.
With autoimmune disease, trauma is a huge underlying root cause.
Oh
It
yeah.
was for me, for sure, in addition to lots of little things along the way, lifestyle things. But I was always somebody that bottled things up. So I relate to what you just said. I've always bottled things up, had a really hard time voicing things for whatever reason. And that causes this underlying inflammation in our bodies and this dysregulated nervous system. Do you think that trauma can, well, obviously we're just talking about it, but do you think trauma is something that exacerbates ADHD or can it also mimic ADHD? Is there a difference there that you've seen?
I mean, like, just to put this out there, like, I'm definitely still learning, and I'm not an expert on this, but in my own experience, like, trauma is at the root of almost everything that we go through. And like, with especially with autoimmune, that can be so many different things. But but with ADHD in particular, and a lot of my research has like led me to Dr. Gabor Mate, and he is an incredible resource. Like, he is one of actually my heroes, like, when it comes to the research that he's done. And a lot of what he talks about is that there's when we grow up, especially as like neurodivergence, which I feel like all like, whether you have ADHD or autism or PTSD or whatever it is, like, it's because we're highly sensitive people. We just feel emotions stronger. Have senses. It may not show up the same way in every single highly sensitive person, but it definitely affects us, especially when there's trauma during the pregnancy. So that can affect the way that your brain develops. And it makes sense because, like, a lot of people with ADHD have a particularly tough time with executive functioning, and that part of the brain has been underdeveloped. But at the same time, there's a part of the brain that gets overdeveloped. And I believe that's the emotional, compassionate side, because you often see people with, that are neurodivergent are very like justice oriented, and they love to advocate for causes, and they're such a passion because honestly it's that shared sense of pain, that like, I get what they're going through because I went through that, and I want to help because I got help, and I want to give them what I got.
That's why
And
I'm here too.
yeah, that's amazing. And but it's like, it can also, that trauma, that can lead to that autoimmune disorder, is like, can cause stress when you're younger and the way that you were raised, especially when it comes around neglect. Like, neglect can really seriously damage or limit the amount of growth that your brain does, especially in particular areas like pleasure and feeling okay with yourself. So there's this instant gratification that comes a lot with ADHD, and that can often lead to addiction. So it's like, these things are so, like, yeah, they cross over in a lot of areas.
Mhm.
So it's important to understand exactly what's going on and get really clear on, like, whether you got ADHD, autoimmune, because like the treatment for each one is different. And those treatments can actually make it worse if it's not the right one.
Definitely. Definitely. And, you were talking earlier about that sort of high you got after getting diagnosed officially with
Yeah.
ADHD. I can totally relate to that. It's kind of like, with autoimmune, it can take 7 years for somebody to get diagnosed. And it definitely
Yeah.
took that for me. And when I finally got diagnosed, it was a high. It was like, oh my God, somebody recognizes this. This is real.
Yeah.
This is not in my head, And it was kind of like a thrill because now I had something that I could direct my energy towards more specifically rather than it's just, I don't feel good. I don't know what's wrong with me,
Yeah.
And so you do ride that high, but then it comes the realization of like, oh, this is like, how do I do life with this knowledge now? What does the rest of my
Yeah.
life look like with this? And that can definitely lead to some lows. Let's talk about nervous system regulation. And because it's so important in both ADHD and autoimmune conditions, we see that I would say generally everyone that is in those categories, unless they have it very well under control, they have a dysregulated nervous system. How do you personally ground yourself and pay attention to that regulation for yourself so as to hit that reset button when you find yourself getting into that like overdrive mode of ADHD?
Yeah, it's an excellent question. So one of the things that, well, there's a lot of things that I do. Eat right, get the right amount of sleep, get plenty of water. But the major thing that really has helped me is mindfulness. And like it's really just giving you that space because oftentimes it's like the stories that we're telling ourselves that are the most disruptive, that give you the most stress because it's really not necessarily the story that you created to tell yourself, but it's the story that the world helped you create so that you could deal with the world. So it's like there's a lot of your brain's there to protect you. It's there to make sure that it wants to go away from pain as much as possible. And there's nothing wrong with not wanting to get hurt, but sometimes like the things that you developed early on aren't the right things that are going to help you. So, in order to really explore those things, you need to like be able to have space. It's like working out for your mind. It seems it's not you can't just like lift weights with your mind. You might be able to read a book and that's going to work out, but like the real work that I've done is like just sitting with those thoughts and like not even in a way that I'm like judging the thoughts that are in my head. I'm more observing them and saying, "Okay, like a significant time for me was like I was learning about those stories in this mindfulness journey and talking about like how you can question the stories that you're telling yourself if you can catch them. So one of them was like I was feeling really depressed because, felt like, no one was calling me to check up on me. Of course, like I had them in my life, but like, it'd be nice if they texted me and asked me how I'm doing. And, so I attached my worth to that. So I felt so depressed. Like, if no one wants to talk, like, that means I'm worthless. So there was so much depression in that. And so I started doing the mindfulness technique with that. And I saw like the thoughts as a river, but this deep depression was this boulder in that river that wasn't going anywhere. So I was like, even in the act of being mindful, I was like, okay, I'm being mindful now. That's loving myself. That's showing that I am worth it. So it was like I was able to start to unravel and those stories that I was telling myself and feeling like, not necessarily the depression going away, but it started to ease up and the weight of like that. Because like if you feel like you're worthless and you have nothing to offer, like there's a high chance that you might think about suicide. And I've had thoughts of suicide throughout my life. It hasn't been to the point where I've actually contemplated and planned on executing that, but it's definitely crossed my mind, and I can understand how like, especially when you don't talk about the things that you need that are going on with your life, that you have, one, two, or three people in your life that you trust with that information that they're going to be able to support you and comfort you in that situation like that was something that you totally need in your network.
Hey, I just wanted to jump in here and interrupt the program for just a hot minute. You know that I'm so passionate about this podcast, but what I'm also really passionate about is helping women with lupus minimize their symptoms, boost their energy so that they can indulge in life again. So if you are a woman who is struggling with lupus, who is sick and tired of being sick and tired, who's struggling to manage your flares, if you're finding that your lupus symptoms are just really getting in the way of you being able to live your life the way you want to, I feel you. I've been there myself and I felt the same way. And what I've found is that there are a certain set of health fundamentals that once applied, will support you in your foundational health. They will support you in building and maintaining that energy, minimizing flares, and allowing you to, again, indulge in life and follow your passions. So, if that is something that you are interested in creating for yourself, let's jump on a call together. I will walk you through the process that I use with my clients to get them from sick and tired to strong foundation of health by implementing my Health Bridge protocol. If this is something you're interested in chatting more about, I would love to talk to you. Apply for a free clarity call with me, and I look forward to getting to know you soon. And now back to the episode. Yeah, I agree with that completely. I shifted so much in my health journey and just my life trajectory when I started doing exactly what you're saying, learning to really recognize the thoughts that I was having, the word choices that I was using when narrating to myself what my situation was, how I felt, where I was going with my life, and learning to catch those limiting beliefs. So like you were saying that the stories that we're telling ourselves are the things that are creating the most stress in our life. It's because we're just so used to believing our own thoughts. But when you can start to catch them and question them and like, well, where's the proof for that? Where's the proof that I'm have nothing to offer? Where's the proof that no one loves me? And you can start questioning. Just the little questions opens that door to like, well, maybe there is another possibility here. And just, I think it was Esther Hicks that came up with the 17 seconds. Like, if you can catch those limiting beliefs or those super negative thought pathways in 17 seconds of thinking them, and you can kind of flip it and reverse it, you can diminish the energy that goes along with it. The energy doesn't settle into your system. And just those simple practices of starting to recognize those things and flip it, once you kind of get that in your routine, it can completely change your experience of day-to-day life. And you can open up the door towards healing. You can open up the door towards maybe ADHD is my superpower and not my kryptonite. Or maybe heal
you
from
definitely
autoimmune.
you definitely have to, like, in order to heal, in order to do anything in life, you've got to see yourself as worth it, and that's not going to always happen right away. Like, words, like, people don't understand, and I didn't understand for the longest time the power that words have, both positive and negative. Like, negative words can literally destroy lives. But we're often taught, that nursery rhyme in school that sticks with us: sticks and stones may break my bones, but names will not. Yes, they will hurt you. They will hurt you probably more than sticks and stones. So it's an incredibly misleading and misguiding thing that's put out there, because like you can literally, your subconscious is so powerful that if you plant words in them of, like, you continue to believe that you can do whatever you put your mind to. Like, I'm going to be good at this. Like, I'm going to have a podcast that's really great and it's going to help a lot of people. And you continue to reinforce that day after day. That's what makes successful, healthy people. Isn't it? Like, the same things happen to them. They're just willing to go through those failures, but understand, they look at them in a different way. They put more positive words on it. And if you can really master that and start to cultivate that, your life is going to change. Like, you can literally heal yourself with the right words.
That is so powerful. I love that. You can heal yourself with the right words. We should put that on a bumper sticker. It's so
Yeah.
true. It's so powerful. They call it spelling because words are spells, right? We
Yeah,
have to
I
remember
love
that.
that.
Hmm. I want to talk about radical responsibility because this is something that I speak to a lot with my clients. And I think that I've seen you speak to that as well. I also want to talk about radical acceptance. And those things seem like they contradict each other, but I think they kind of go hand in hand. So I'd love your take on it. Radical responsibility, again, was something that shifted my trajectory in life. And it's the switch from that victim mindset. You sort of spoke to that earlier when you were talking about your, I think, work situation. You know, you weren't doing well at work. You
Hmm.
were breaking things, or you were close to getting fired, and you're blaming things on other people, you know, making it other people's fault. And I think we can all relate in some way or fashion to being that victim mindset of these things are happening to me from an outside. It's not coming from inside. This is all happening to me. And when we have that mindset, we're playing the victim role. And that's not to say that everything is under our control, but we can take responsibility for where we're at in our life right now and say, what was my role in getting here? And then once
Yeah.
we can decide that we actually played a role in our lives to get here, that means that we have the power to shift the trajectory in whichever way we want. So I love your
Yeah.
take on that. And then we can get into
Thank
the
you.
radical acceptance as well.
So yeah, and it's to clear this up is like we all have a negative bias. That's how the world works. That's how the world, like, the system's structured, the news, it's all negative because they're in the business to make money. So they understand the psychology. They know what's going to sell. And so if you're feeling negative right now, it's not you, it's only a natural state for the human mind to be in. So and when talk about being positive, I'm not like, okay, just speak only positive things. It's about accepting the reality of what's going on and looking at it in a way that, like, what can I learn from this? Or like accepting, like, okay, I feel sad, or I feel scared, or I feel depressed. Like being okay with these feelings because God gave us these feelings for a reason. It's there to help us navigate the world, and it's there to understand what our core values are, which should be our compass, but we've lost that. So with radical acceptance, that wasn't something that I've had. Like I told you, I was the victim. It's easy to play the victim, but when you play the victim, you're like, you're really only not forgiving yourself. It was something, and I'm going to kind of go off to the side here because, like, I heard something yesterday and I can't remember exact. It was like on the Tim Robbins podcast, and like this girl was talking about how this woman was traumatized and beating herself up about what one person did, like, that wasn't right, but it was like for 30 years. She said he did it for one day. He violated her, but for 30 years she was punishing herself. So it's like, because we hold on to it and we allow people to do those things to us, that we're allowing them to get in our mind. And now we're the ones, because we're in control of what we feel for the most part, and we're in control of what we say. So if you continue you're only allowing yourself to be abused. So with my journey to radical acceptance was like, I didn't know what love was. Like I didn't know how to love myself. There was, at least, yeah, like on a deep sense. So what really helped me was, it was like, I'm I would get angry at a lot of people because they would get in the way of what I was doing, or they wouldn't understand, or whatever the reason was. Like I was getting angry at a lot of people and I was really just angry at myself, but I couldn't understand that. So what I did to kind of break through that was like, I'm not going to get angry at that person because I love myself enough not to put myself through that energy and waste that energy on being angry. So it was like this slogan that you hear a lot, and it's like, learn to love yourself so you can't love yourself. I mean, you can't love others until you love yourself. So I was like, wow, that makes total sense because I'm not loving him to not get angry at him. I'm loving me because like I don't want him to have that control over like me because it's that stress. Like we get angry at people that didn't even do anything like intentionally to hurt us, but we have these expectations in our mind that they should know what we're thinking. And it's hard for people to know what you're thinking when you haven't communicated that. People aren't mind readers. It's like I've talked about this with recently with this mental health committee at my job, and we were talking about difficult emotions and how do you deal with that with your partner. And there was a lot of people at my job who were, in upper management talking about which was great. They were being vulnerable, and I really appreciated them for having that strength to be able to talk about that. But they were talking about how their partner, the person closest to them often doesn't know what they're feeling. So it's like, imagine how much more so that is in the real world where you work. So it's incredibly insightful.
Yeah. I think what you said is so true. And as far as the real root cause of
Yeah.
probably all the world's problems is that we don't love ourselves enough,
Yeah. And
deeply
we
and
don't think
truly.
like we're allowed to do it because we think, oh, if we love ourselves, we're like egotistical. And it depends on what your version of love is. Like if you're like you love yourself, so you're boasting about how much like what you have and this, I don't really think that's real love. That's just like an insecurity, because if you were okay with that, you wouldn't need to talk about it. There was this guy, I think he was called Lord something in this prison, and Dr. Gabor Mate was like, man, that guy is so insecure that he needs everybody to call him Lord for him to feel like he's adequate.
Totally. Yeah. So true. It's so true. And you're right. It can look like the lack of self love can look like so many different things depending on the person and their
Yeah.
situation. When we're talking, of course, in this conversation, when it comes to ADHD, depression, chronic illness, it's it's getting to the root of where are we giving away our power? Where are we giving our self love away? And if we can start getting down to the root of that and cultivating that self love and self awareness, self acceptance, and take radical responsibility for those things, then we can really start to breathe deeper and see our circumstances in a totally different light. It's like a total perspective shift.
Yeah, definitely.
Mhm.
And it's all about like, I know I spent my whole life trying to change who I was to fit in, and then denying that I'm doing that. So it's like this whole life of confusion of like not knowing what my purpose is, not knowing like what I need to do, what even makes me happy, so it's like we most of us spend our whole life in this state of we're just existing to try to please other people when that's not ever going to happen. There's nobody that everybody likes. Like there's not one person, even Jesus, like not there's people that hate that guy. And he didn't really do anything but help save the world. So it's like you gotta be who you are, and that takes time to figure out. But it's like once you start developing that, it's like going to the gym. Like everything's a practice that takes time and effort. And we're in this society where everybody wants these quick fixes. And it's like, that's not a thing. I mean, it may work for a little bit, but it's not going to last. Like everlasting change that's worth it takes time, effort, and continuing to fail and continuing to go back and continuing to improve and be like, yeah, I need to do this and being excited about that. That's where my life is headed. And that's why I want to like coach what I do because like I don't want to be the only I want to share that gift.
Absolutely. The the long term, I talk about shifting 1%. Let's just do 1% better.
Yeah.
What 1% better we can do today. And if we just shift that slight amount, over 6 months, over a year, over 5 years, how far different is our trajectory than if we would have just stayed where we were and kept going forward? Really quick, Holly B here. I just wanted to interrupt the podcast to ask you for a quick favor. Can you take just a moment to like and subscribe to this podcast on whatever platform you are listening in on? It makes a world of a difference. And the reach of this podcast, it takes like literally under 10 seconds. So go do that right now. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. And now back to the episode.
Yeah, this one quote that I heard, it's crazy because it's like you're right now, you're it's 5 years later than it was 5 years ago for you.
Stop it. I don't want to hear that.
So it's like, but either way, you can look at it positive or negative. You could
Right.
be like, okay, well, 5 years from now, it's right now is 5 years from where it's going to be. So
Yeah.
where am I going to be in 5 years? And just looking at it that way, and it's just like changing your whole mindset of like whatever happens now doesn't matter as much because like it's about where I'm going to be. And do I want to be stuck where I am? And you're not going to be stuck. You're going to be worse off because it's just nothing stays the same. It either gets better or it gets worse.
And so, what's one little thing that you can do differently today that's going to shift where you are 5 years from now?
Yeah.
Or we could just stay doing the same thing. It's like we all have that choice, right? But for women, especially once you hit midlife, you have an autoimmune condition. Like, how much longer are you going to wait to make a life change around this? How much longer are you going to wait to say, maybe there's something else I can do that can help me feel a little bit better so that I can enjoy my family more, so that I can get back to that passion that I put to the side because I don't have the energy to do it because I don't feel good. Like, how much longer
Yeah.
are you going to put your life aside when you could start shifting that 1% today or tomorrow? And who knows where you could be a year, 5 years from now?
Yeah.
What's more
Absolutely.
important to you? What's more important to you? Thinking about it and not doing anything because it's too hard, or starting with baby penguin steps? So speaking of that, speaking of baby penguin steps and routines and self-care, I know that routines are important to you just as they are to me. And I'd love to hear your take on what taking consistent steps looks like for you and how much of a change that's had in your life and with other people that you've spoken to that are also going through ADHD and depression.
Yeah, yeah, and I'm, honestly, I'm still learning about my routine, and it's still being developed, and which is great because it always like for ADHD minds, like we get very bored very easily, and if it's not the next new thing, and some people are worse, like they'll go through, I've seen some stuff on TikTok where this one guy's like, well, yeah, if I'm into this medieval armory thing and then I learned everything about it in 2 weeks and then my brain's like, I could care less about that, and you've rearranged your life and you're uprooted your life just for this one thing. So like I understand like that level of hyper focus and distractibility. So with me, like it's really good to, kind of switch up your routine a little bit, but keep like parts of it like consistently the same. Like for me, the one thing that I started doing, it's been probably about almost a year or maybe a little bit longer than that, is like every morning, no matter what the weather, unless it's like hailing, I'm going outside and I'm doing my walk. And then it turned into a mindful walk. And then it turned into a mindful nature walk. So like I'm going out there and like touching trees and, leaves and listening to the birds, and how they praise God. And like every morning they're out there praising God. Like it's incredible, and they don't have anything. Like they don't have stores that they can go to. They don't have like a house or whatever. And, just really just appreciating the abundance that I have. And then, where that routine leads me typically is like where I would like, some days it doesn't always happen, but then I do like a little bit of cardio, like a hit workout on my side, on my bike and my stationary bike. Yeah. And then, then I have breakfast and, usually now it's like I'm reading the scripture. So it's like all that time now has been with God and like trying to get closer to him and understanding him and what his purpose for me in my life. Because like, honestly, and this is what, I've read in this book. It's called The Purpose Driven Life by Rick Warren. And he's talking about we all want to know the purpose of life, but like no philosopher has come close to telling us that because they're not the right source. Like if somebody handed you like an invention or something that you've never seen before and they said, here, you're going to be like, you might try to figure it out, but if you couldn't, you're going to be like, can I get an instruction manual? Or you'd go to the person that handed you the advice and say, how does this work? What is the purpose of it? That's just like with God. He's the one who created us. So it's like, if we want to know our purpose, and each one of those is different, then we have to go to him, and get closer to him and understand how that works over time. So that, like for me, a routine is the foundation of my day. Like my whole day is completely different. I feel like it's like the basement, like that builds up for the day. If I don't have it, my day is like could go anywhere. But at least like I'm prepared for whatever's going to come down that pike.
Yeah. For me, my program is called the Health Bridge
Yeah.
coaching program because you have to build, first, we have to build the solid structure so that we can build that bridge across
Yeah.
from, current symptoms to better health and fulfillment in life. And so it's the same thing. I have a very solid morning routine. Doesn't have to take long, but,
Yeah.
getting up, hydrating, supplements, get outside, even if it's just for a minute or two to like expose my eyes to the sky.
Yeah.
That is where I get that feeling of hope and joy. It
Yeah.
just it just even if I'm dragging when I get out of bed, which I don't usually drag anymore, but as soon as I get outside, it's like, oh, it's beautiful out. Again,
Yeah.
I hear the birds chirping, and the sky is beautiful. And it's like, okay, we can do this. We can do this
Such
to
a
find clean up.
recharge.
Yeah, exactly. Keeping food on point, taking breaks for me throughout the day,
Yeah.
like taking a quick walk at lunchtime, grounding, like you were talking about, touching the leaves, touching the plants. It's like if I can get my feet on that ground, great. If not, touch some plants, touch some rocks that are on the ground, whatever,
Yeah.
and get that grounding in. Having some hard cutoff times in the evening. I'm not always perfect at that, but I'm way better than I used to be because that blue light is a killer, right? And I think I've heard you talk about that before. It's like
Yeah.
it screws up our melatonin. And if we get to bed too late and we're on our screens right up until bedtime, we're ruining our sleep pattern, we're ruining our wake pattern.
Yeah.
So, just those little basics to start with, and then always practicing some gratitude, preferably before I even get out of bed in the morning. I will focus on prayer or acknowledging things that I'm grateful for,
Yeah.
things that I'm looking forward to. It sets your brain on the right path instead of what I say people and what I used to do is you wake up and you immediately do that body scan of how bad am I feeling today? What's wrong with me? Does my head hurt? Does my body ache?
Yeah.
Where
Yeah.
is that going to send your trajectory? We gotta get the mindset solid before our feet hit the ground. And so, yeah, I think just those small, consistent things, even
Yeah.
if you're brain foggy, even if you're fatigued, even if your hyperactive ADHD brain is going, we can still remember to take some deep breaths. We can still do these small mindful things throughout the day to help reset that nervous system because that goes all the way back to our, nervous system regulation.
Yeah, and I love that you talked about grateful. It's like that is a strength. That is such a powerful thing in your life. And, most of us overlook that, because we're not grateful because of we don't have this or we didn't get that or somebody else got that. But if we start to look at what we do have and be grateful, that's where the that radical acceptance comes from. And with that routine, it's like, if you're trying to develop a routine, you've got to give yourself some leeway. And like if you miss a day, that's okay. Like just try it again tomorrow. Like don't give up your routine because you missed that one day. Like you may be giving up on the next best thing that's going to help you because like when you're out there with nature, it's like something about the way we're designed that like we need that sunlight and we need that nature and it really just rejuvenates wherever we're at.
It's truly how God designed us. We were designed for that. And we have
Yep.
now designed lives where we are stuck in these boxes under fake lighting and in front of screens and
Yeah.
sedentary. We weren't designed for any of those things. So, yeah, getting out and just remembering what your body was designed for and slowly adding those things into your daily routine, even if it's just for a few minutes to step outside, breathe fresh air. You can
Yeah.
make simple as that. Clean water, fresh air.
Yeah, and movement is so key when it comes to learning, especially with ADHD. Like we're designed to think on the fly, and that involves like getting out and moving. And
Mhm.
like what you were talking about earlier with the blue light, that's literally like it tricks your brain into thinking that it's sunlight. So it resets. So the longer you're on your phone, like that's why it's harder for you to get to sleep. And that's the other foundation to my my workout, I mean my day is what do I get to bed early enough? Do I like prepare for bed so that I get the best sleep?
Mhm.
Because like sleep is so overlooked on like the importance of what it does to help prepare you for that next day.
Agreed. Yeah. And our nervous system can't calm down if we don't have that rest and
Yeah,
reset at night,
it's part of that
So
stress.
exactly. Exactly. Um, so I think just lastly, I want some good, and you've given us tons already, but just I really want to drive home that sort of reframing that of neurodivergence as being a strength in our lives rather than a hindrance. Uh, just like with autoimmune conditions, it's like, yes, we have these odds stacked against us here, but how can we turn it into our strength? What can we learn from it? How can we use this to move forward because it's here to teach us something? We're experiencing this because we need to learn and grow with and through this,
Yeah.
not let it hold us back. When you're working with people with ADHD, how do you approach that when they're still in the throes of there's this thing and it's wrong with me and I don't fit in and what do I do?
Yeah. No, it's about like you look at what's going on and like you look at yeah, your life's hard and you struggle with all these things, but look at the strength that it took for you to like come here and ask for help. That takes a lot of humility. Humility is a strength. The fact that you wake up every day and go to work despite dreading it, and like it's so much harder for you than everybody else, and nobody understands, that's resilience. There is strength even in what you're doing. Like we're too busy looking at the weaknesses, looking at our deficit, because like that's the system that we're in. That's not your fault. It's just we've got to learn to reprogram the way that we think about life and our capabilities. And like for me, looking at things like creativity and the love of learning, like those are those things that like it's not just drawing or you're a good painter or you're a singer. It's like can you solve problems in a way that's like outside of the box? Like that you people are always coming up to you, wow, I didn't see it that way. And you were a lot of times when I heard that, I was like, well, I just saw it first. They see it that way, but we don't. Our brains see things different. So that's why it's important to have that diverse thinking, especially when it comes to creative problem solving. And you could be that next person if you just had a little more confidence or if you just looked at it in a little different light. And it's not going to be a transformation where it happens like right away. It's going to be something that takes time and effort and you continuing to catch those negative thoughts, those negative beliefs, and those negative stories that you tell yourself and start to be like, no, that's not true. Like, why? Or be like, why would you say that? Like, not being like, you're stupid or how could you say that? Be like, I'm curious. And that's another strength. Like I'm curious as to why you're saying it. Treat your yourself as if it's like your mind is a little bit different from who you are. What's going on with those thoughts aren't all your own. You need to decipher the ones that like actually are helping you, and the only way to do that is questioning the thoughts. That's one of the most powerful things that I do. It's like the biggest question that I always ask is like, what's the rush? What is the rush? Like, you've left early enough. Why are you speeding to get to where you need it? Or why are you working this hard? Like, what is the rush? And a lot of times that it's just that question breaks the cycle. So it's like being able to understand and dig deeper into where like the root cause of like why you continue to act the way you do. Because there's an answer there.
There is. And it's approaching things from your higher self, the higher self that's up here, your soul, using
Yeah.
that as the observer, like you said earlier, being the
Yeah.
observer of your thoughts. So let your higher self be asking those questions of what is the rush? Where's the
Yeah,
proof for
my
that?
my my therapist was saying like have a conversation with your higher self.
Yes.
Like debate it out. Do what you need to do. It's okay. Maybe like go to your car, go to the bathroom or whatever you need to do to have that conversation, but really just allow that session to go out because like that is going to be a powerful transformation device for you.
I love it. That's powerful. Any last thoughts that you want to leave with our listeners? Maybe our women that are struggling in this autoimmune space, they're trying to get through this symptom management. They're feeling like, life is really hard. And maybe I have some ADHD on top of this. Maybe I have some depression on top of this. Final thoughts for them.
Yeah, just continue like I feel that if you're sensing it, we're very intuitive to who we are and you have those strengths in there. So just explore that, get some help, talk to other people. Maybe you probably know somebody with ADHD. Ask them like some deeper questions about that and just see what they did to get the help that they got and, try to follow that journey. You don't have to do this alone. The worst thing you can do is give up and think no one can help me. because there are so many people that are going through very similar situations that you are going through, and there's an answer to it. It may not cure or fix it in the way that you think, but I don't think it's something that needs to be fixed. It's just something that needs to be just readjusted.
Recognized and learned. There's steps to learning how we can work with this instead
Yeah.
of fighting against it, right?
Yeah.
Love it.
There's always help.
There's always help. Exactly. Don't give up. There's so many of us out here that want to help and that can support you. So, yeah, the world needs, I keep coming back to this, especially right now. The world's crazy. Like, we need people to be lit up. We need people to accept how amazing they are and to be able to shine that light on their communities and into the world to help this world grow again. And
Yeah.
so that's why we do this podcast. That's why I speak to people like you.
Thank you.
We're here. We want to support you.
Yeah, and you are what the world needs, especially if you feel like you're not. Like you have something to offer. We all have something to offer, and whether it's money or an experience or, mostly the experience of like relatability is so powerful. There's something therapeutic in understanding that you're not alone in your struggle, that there is help out there and that people won't judge you for who you are. Yeah, there will be people that do, but they're dealing with their own trauma on their own. And like I've only been able to see that, and the more that I explore my own trauma, and like even no matter how good I get, like I understand like I've done some horrible things in my life. I've never thought I could get over or forgive myself for. But like so I can't judge anybody for where they're at in their life because that's still part of my story. It's not like I'm better than anybody in that sense.
And and once we realize that we're not the only ones that have the trauma, that have the experiences we're ashamed of, that brings us all to a level where we can relate and help lift each other up.
Yes, definitely.
Ron, it's been such a pleasure. Thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, I appreciate you having me on the podcast.
Oh, and where, of course, can everybody find you?
Yeah, if you'd like to step into my world, you can always find me on my podcast. Don't mind me. I just have ADHD. It's on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, your favorite platform. And I'm also giving your viewers a gift, and it's my self-discovery journal. You can find that at youradhdguy.com. And I'm also doing this 7-day Reclaim Your Voice challenge in I believe it's November 3rd through the 9th. And it's all about making that transformation. If you feel like you're tired from living small and you don't know who you are and you want to try to figure that out, this is that opportunity. So definitely check out those things on youradhdguy.com.
Awesome. I'll have all the links in the show notes for everybody. And again, just thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Appreciate it. God bless.
Thank you so much to Ron Souers for sharing his wisdom and vulnerability today. I hope you're walking away with a deeper understanding of how your nervous system, your routines, and your mindset all weave together, and that neurodivergence isn't a limitation, but it's actually a key to unlocking your mind and body's natural rhythm. If this episode spoke to you, remember you don't have to navigate autoimmunity alone. You can find my free daily lupus guide and symptom tracker in the show notes, or you can also apply for a free health strategy call with me if you're ready to go deeper into your healing journey. Until next time, take a deep breath, give yourself grace, and keep building your bridge back to health.